Okay, I guess we're recording.
Oh, here we go.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry about that. I accidentally turned everything off. Okay, let's try this again. All right. I didn't just turn off Zoom, I turned off like everything in my room here. That was kind of interesting. Okay, so as I was saying, it used to be that doing graphical user interfaces in MATLAB was a really involved process where you had to do everything line by line, you know, all your code line by line. And it was cumbersome, it was not user-friendly or intuitive or anything. But in the past few years, they've created some very useful tools for doing graphical user interface work, and so it's made it much more accessible. The bad side to this is that I've only started learning it in the past year, because before this, we didn't even go into graphical user interfaces in this first year class because they were just too much to mess with. There was just too much to do. So we just didn't even, I never even learned how to do graphical user interfaces using MATLAB. I even learned to do it using like basic, like Visual Basic. But anyway, the point is that you'll have to bear with me because I often mix things up and I'm still learning. They change things just about every year as well because they're still building this. Protocol, so it's a little bit confusing. But let's see how we'll do here. So for those of you who are not aware what a graphical user interface is yet, Windows is based on a graphical user interface operating system. So that means that everything that you see here is a graphical object. You've got these windows that you can move around, you've got buttons you can push. If I want to go to my Firefox thing here, I can actually just, actually I probably should share my screen with you, huh? Share screen. Okay, so anyway, so if I'm in Firefox, for example, and I want to restore all the windows that I've been using on my previous session, I go here and I push a button, and it's this graphical interface is based on a input device, which is my mouse, which of course has a cursor on the screen, and wherever that cursor is, it essentially records its position on the screen. With the screen is split up into pixels. There's each pixel is essentially a number in an array, and each pixel has a color, has a brightness, but it also might have a function. For example, this part of the screen right here is just all white, so you're just going to have a bunch of zeros here in the matrix representing this part of the screen. But this part of the screen also represents a window here, which is my assignment previewer for this particular program I'm looking at. And if I go to this part of the window, it's actually a little more gray, and there's some black lettering in here, and each pixel has its own number in the array representing its color and its grayness or color or whatever. But it also may have a function. There's a part of this array, so this array is not just two-dimensional. In other words, this array is more like a cell array or some kind of array like that, where it can be multi-dimensional, it can be four-dimensional, eight-dimensional, whatever. But it holds many pieces of information associated with this position on the screen. And one of those pieces of information is a pull-down box, which opens another window, another graphical user interface. Okay? And this one over here is yellow and black and some different shapes, each pixel, but it also has functionality associated with it. So each array now has multiple things associated with it. It's not just, like an image array where it's color and, brightness or something in the different elements of the array, but also functionality. There's other things that tell the computer what this part of the screen does. And of course, it gets really confusing because you can move this part of the screen around. So the graphical user interface is much more complex than we might imagine because it has this ability to be moved around the screen. It also has the ability to be hidden and other things like that. So that is the basic idea of graphical user interfaces. There are many different functions that it can entail. There's just so much involved with it, and we're going to learn how to do some of the most basic stuff with graphical user interface programming. So first of all, we want to learn how to use the tools that help us to create these things. And this is what's making graphical user interface programming in MATLAB much more accessible. And so we're going to go up here to our new thing, and we're going to open up the new here, and we're going to choose the graphical user interface right here. So we're going to open a new graphical user interface, and it's going to open up what we call the Guide Quick Start. So GUIDE stands for Graphical User Interface something, I don't know what. Probably says, what's that?
Mine doesn't say.
Okay, so if you go, don't go to New Script, but go to your new plus button here. Does it not have a graphical user interface option? What does it have?
There. Yeah, I changed the.
Okay.
So I have function, example class, system object, figure, app, command.
Okay, go under app. So if you're using the newer version, then there's a couple different things here. You can go to app, and then graphical user interface will be under app.
So I have guide or app designer.
So let's go to guide.
Okay.
And that should open your Guide Quick Start here. One more reason I need to update my MATLAB on this computer. So once you've opened up your Guide Quick Start, did everybody get to this point?
Yeah.
Okay. If you didn't get to this point, tell me right away so we can help you get there. You're going to go to New, to App, and then to Guide. And it takes you to the Guide Quick Start. You can either create a new GUI or open an existing one that you already have. If you choose to open existing, it's going to give you some recently opened files or the option to browse your computer for different files, which will open a window browser here. We're going to go ahead and open up a blank GUI. So we'll go to create new GUI, and then we'll open up blank GUI default, and then we'll just click OK. And it should bring you up a window that kind of looks like this. And now it might bring up a preview window, which case would look like let's see, what is the preview window? Where's the preview window? Well, no, it should look like this. Anyway, it should give you this window, which is the layout window for your GUI. And you have different views. If you go up here to View, you can look at the Property Inspector, which is going to bring up a little side window, which we'll use later. You've seen this before. You've seen something similar to this board when we were doing handles in the last chapter. We can also look up the Object Browser, which will bring up another window up here. Close that. And you can also bring up the Editor, which will bring up a opening window here. So there's some different views that you can do that. And you can also choose options in your layout, under your layout, to snap to grid or not to snap to grid. What that means is that whenever you put something on here, it's either going to, so for example, if I come over here and select push button and I bring it out here, it's going to automatically try to sit these things right on the lines. It's going to snap into those lines there. If I choose it not to do that, if I go to not snap to grid, then I put a push button out here, it's not going to try to snap it into a particular position. And notice that as I move these things around down in your right hand corner, the positions are changing. There's these axes down here that are changing. The current point that I'm at, the position that I'm going to, so on and so forth. I can put that down there and I can change the position as long as it's highlighted. I can come down here and I can change position down here. Well, I can't do it that way. I have to go to the view the property inspector. And I can change its position from here in right here in the position down here. So this tells you the exact position, and I can edit that position if necessary. Edit it over here and so forth. So anyway, those are just a couple of things that we can do. Now notice that we're not doing much code here so far. And that is true, but believe it or not, MATLAB is creating code in the background for this. So there will be some code associated with this that we will get to eventually. We can actually look at that code. Let's see, where can we look at that code? Not there. I can't remember where we can look at this code, but we'll see this code eventually. We'll get to that eventually. But so you don't have to really worry about taking notes at this point, which is what I'm trying to get at here. I think when we save it, we'll be able to see the code the best. But MATLAB has essentially created some code that has made a template for creating this GUI. And now we're going to go ahead and try to do some things on this. This is very much point and click. You can put things on here, highlight it, delete it. You can change the size. So if we put a push button back on here, I can change the size of my push button by grabbing the corner and making the push button bigger, make it taller, make it skinnier, however I want to do that. I can change the text in my push button by double clicking on the text, and then I can come up here into the inspector and change the title on there. There's another way to change the text on there. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. Can't remember. But anyway, so you can do a lot of things with this. You can move it, you can keep moving it around. It's just very much point and click and drag. You can put some stuff, different types of objects out in here, kind of play around with it. You can put a table out here so that you've got a table on your... So essentially what we're doing here is we're creating some kind of interactive window for people to do things with, right? You can put in, and there's many tools, and these are not all the tools that are available. These are only some of the tools that are available. And as we click on them, we can delete them. We can duplicate them if we right-click on them so we can make new ones. You can cut them out. You can copy them. You can send them to the front. You can do a lot of things that you could normally do in many programs with Windows. So there's lots of things to do here once you get into this, this guide platform or this guide template. Just so you know how beautiful this is, when you had to do this before, you literally had to start by creating M file like a function that you would program all of this stuff into. You would program the box that would show up, and you would program the background. You'd even have to program this template background, and you'd have to program it as a window that would pop up, and you would have to program buttons in, and they would take several lines of code for each thing. And you'd have to say what size you wanted, what color you wanted it, what shape you wanted it, the edges, what you wanted to do, what the functionality was going to be. You know, all kinds of arrays that would be associated with where these things were on the screen, you know, the pixels that were associated with what functions. It was a pain in the butt. So this is much better, much better dealing with this. There are many versions of, many types of code that do this kind of programming where it's point and click, drag and drop kind of code work. This is not new by any means, but it's useful for sure. Okay, so let's go back to something, let's do something like in the book so that you can follow along in the book. They're going to do a GUI, this is right on page 598, I guess. Yeah, 598. We're going to make a GUI that allows us to enter a number of sides on a polygon, and then it will plot that polygon in polar coordinates. Well, that's cool. We've done that. We've done that code before where we plotted a polygon of different sides, so we know how to write the code for that. We know how to plot it. Let's figure out how we do it, make a GUI that allows the user to interact in a different way. So in our GUI, we're going to have three components. We're going to put in first an axis, so we're going to drag and drop an axis over here. Now remember with MATLAB, you just have to click on something and drag it in. But in this case, we've got our axes in here. Now we want to Um, now we want to change the size. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So we hover over it until we get the right size that we want. That's pretty nice size. And I'm going to go back to my layout here, and I'm going to snap to grid so that I have these things lining up nicely. Snap to grid right into there. And I'm going to actually make this snap into that size right there. And then at the bottom, we're going to put in a static text box, which means a static text is just something you're going to type into the program. So this is just something that we're, some words that we're going to include in this, in this GUI here. So we could type instructions, or we could type a title into here, anything we want, really. Come on. I want to make this box smaller slightly. There we go. So there's my static text box I've put in there. Now we're going to put a push button in. So I put a, no, we're actually going to put an edit text box in. So I click on my edit text box, put it over here, and I'm going to move it around until it snaps in somewhere. And I'm going to, well, I'm just going to move it around here a little bit. That's good. So now I've got the basic setup all created, and I'm ready to go. What am I going to do with these? Well, this is where we're going to graph our polygon. This is where we're going to give instructions. We're going to tell the people, we're going to tell whoever it is that's using this, we're going to tell them type a number of sides or something, type you know, any whole number or something, and then we'll put this edit text box in here, which will allow them to actually type in the number. Your number goes here or whatever, and they can type in the number. And then once they've done that, hit enter. Then we should be able to see whatever we see up here in our little axes box. So let's go ahead and change some of the properties of these things. We'll start by changing the properties of our, let's do the edit text box. Is that the one they do first? Which one do they do first? Sure. So we've got our edit text box highlighted already, so we can go to our property inspector, which you can either do by going to view, showing, and do the property inspector, or you can go over here and click this. Nope, no, wrong one, cancel. This one is your property inspector. So that brings up this inspector window. And the inspector window, very much like the handle inspector window that we saw last chapter, is just all the attributes, everything that's associated with this little box. So it's kind of a shortcut to all the things that we've programmed. Every one of these things in here requires some lines of code in MATLAB. So you can see there's a lot of lines of code in MATLAB associated with this one little box here so far. The one that we're looking for
You can also
is...
just double click it.
Yes, you can double click it. You can also right click it. So if you right click on it, you can go to the property inspector. Or if you double click on it, you can go to the property inspector. There's lots of ways to do that. Excuse me. What we're looking for is we're looking for the text that's inside of here, and that will, so over here are the properties, and over here are the different things that those properties are set to. So if you look down along here and look for something that says edit text, we should be able to find it. Am I in the right one? Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Here we go. Now I should be in the right one.
Under string it says edit text.
Yep. So right here we come to this part that says edit text. That's the text that's in this box, and that's the string characteristic of this particular object. And we can go ahead and edit that text by clicking on this little pencil. That's your little editor button. Should be the editor button. Actually, they want you to click on this little thing to the left. Usually it's this guy here, but that's okay. We'll click on this guy, and we can put whatever text we want in here. So, so your number goes here, or something like that, right? Hit OK. Notice that since I edited that text, and it's a longer text than was in there before, it doesn't all show up because the window's not big enough now. It's not automatically going to adjust for the size, so we can go and adjust the size. We can either adjust the size by going up to the editor and adjusting the size, or we can adjust the size back here in the window. Most people will just go to the window and change it. Some people are kind of sticklers for this. This is going to be your width and height numbers right here. I'm just going to adjust it back here in my window here. So you just adjust it that way, and my number goes here, is now done. Then we can go to our static text box, and we can change that one. And that one is going to have a string as well. It's going to be called static text. We'll go here and we'll adjust the text in here, the string in here. We'll call it, say, type in any whole number. Maybe we'll be a little more clear. Integers greater than 0. For those who don't know what a whole number is, that box I'd already made big enough to hold 2 lines of code or 2 lines of string, so it's good to go. It just went ahead and put the next one on the next line. I'm going to move this over a little bit to center it with the other one a little bit more. And so now we've got these. There are other things that we can do with these. If we go over here, there are things like we can change the foreground color. Let's go ahead and do that. Foreground color will change to pink. See what that does for us. Changes the text color essentially. Change the font weight. We could, boldify it if we wanted to. And we can change the size of the font right up here to 50 if we want to make it huge so it doesn't fit in our box. Go down to 12 so it fits in our box a little bit better. We'll go back to 10 so it fits in our box completely. You can change the name of the font, the type of font, the angle of font, all kinds of things. We could also change the box itself. Let's see here. We could actually change what it is. So right now it's just a text box. We could change it to a toggle button, a radio button. We could change it to some other kind of thing, which we don't want to do. But we could. But what I'm looking for here is I guess that's about it. Oh, background color up here. So I want to change my background color. I've got a pink foreground. Let's do something different than just gray in the background. Let's do purple, just to make it exciting. Then it just makes you sick to look at it. So we'll change our foreground color to a darker color. So anyway, you can do all kinds of things, of course. All right, so done with that for now. Done with this other one for now. Let's go on. So let's save this. We can either save it right here, or we can save and run. If we run it, it should save it automatically. So you're willing or activating will save changes to your figure file in MATLAB code. So we want to save it. We're not going to save it as untitled. We'll go ahead and save it as polygon. And I'm sure I have one in my thing here somewhere. _GUI .fig. So these are going to be, oh, it's already as a .fig. At the bottom here, it's already chosen it as a .fig, and that's fine. And since I already have one, I'm going to replace it, I guess. And we'll replace that. Okay. So now we've got it. Now look at all the code it's created. Here is what it looks like. You can see that we've got some overlap here, so we might want to change that so that we pull it down a little bit. But this is kind of like a preview of what's going to go on. This is the figure that is the template that we've created. But look at all the code that is behind this. That's no slouch of code. There's a bunch of functions in here. And there's, you got some if statements in here. You got some let's see, we got some assignments of parameters here. We've got a whole bunch of functions in here that we actually haven't used yet, because each one of these functions is associated with something that's in our figure. One of them is associated with the text line. One of them is associated with the button. One of them is associated with the graph on there. And one of them is associated with the whole thing. And also there are handles with these as well. There are objects and handles. You can see that there are handles that are put in here. They're using the handles output where it's the dot output that we've, or the dot calling that we've used before. So they've assigned these functions to handles as well. So that makes the coding a little more efficient, I guess you'd say. Okay. So congratulations, you created a graphical user interface screen, a figure. Now we actually have to make it do something. How do we do that? Okay. So some of these things that are in here are things that we don't want to mess with. Some of these things are actually creating the buttons and the graphical interfaces, and we don't really want to mess with them, but there is some code in here that is going to tell those buttons and tell those things on the screen what to do, and that is the stuff that we do want to mess with. And this is where we start getting into the code. So here are the things that we should deal with. We want to deal with. And this is, we're on page 601 at this point. They have two things they tell us that we want to mess with. Now I always forget what they are. So that's GUI name underscore opening FCN, opening function. So we're looking for GUI underscore, here we go.
Line 48 is something similar, but
yeah, that is actually the beginning of it, but we're actually looking for GUI opening function. And it actually may have changed. I don't know. Okay, so
you have to go to the go-to icon on the toolbar to find it.
the go-to icon will take you to different places in the function, different places, different functions within your function. So these are called the sub-functions within the main function. So the file is the main function, and all the functions that are inside it are essentially the sub-functions. And I believe that this is the one that we do want to mess with, this opening function. And then there are many callback functions within here, which are the other ones that we want to get into. Yeah, so this is right. I think that they actually have that. I think that's actually a typo. I don't think it should be GUI underscore name underscore opening function. I think it should be name underscore GUI. I think that's a typo in the book. Because I've never seen it done that way. I've never seen it shown that way, and it's certainly not showing that way right now in my MATLAB, obviously not in yours. So. Yeah, so you can click it that way and it'll take you directly to the first instance of that. Takes you to that function, the very beginning of it. And essentially this is the code. Right up here it tells you that it executes just before Polygon GUI is made visible. This is the code that is loaded into MATLAB that is available to the user as soon as it opens. So it essentially tells all this GUI everything it needs to know about the buttons that are going to be pushed, what's going to happen if those buttons are pushed, where it's going to print things to, things that it's going to, all the things it's going to do. So this function here is something that we are allowed to mess with. And then as we go down here to these other objects, these callback objects down here, then we can start to change things that are going on with for individual things. For example, if we push a button, if pushing a button is going to cause us to calculate something, then we need to associate that button push with that calculation. If calculating that certain thing is supposed to graph something to a graphing window, then we need to have that code put in there. And so we're going to be calling using different handles to call different functions and to send things back and forth from different functions. One of these functions is associated with the button, but it's got to send something to the function that is associated with the graphing. Because when you push the button, you're going to call up a routine to calculate something. Once you've calculated it, you're going to call up a routine to plot something, and you're going to send that plot to the plot window, and so on and so forth. And that's what they're getting at here as they show us these things. So let's just move on. So we want to move to the callback, which is the first one that we want to do is edit one callback, which is right. They actually called it edit two callback because I already had an edit one callback. So at the bottom of yours, do you have an edit one callback instead of edit two callback? Does anybody have that function in their Polygon?
I have an edit one.
Yeah.
Callback, line 77.
Okay, so in line 77 of mine, it wrote in edit two callback because I already had one saved with an edit one callback in it. So remember that these functions are actually functions. So we have to be aware that these things are in our folder up here. If you go up into our folder here, you're going to have a whole bunch of junk that's been added to it. Let's see if I can find some of them. They're probably in a folder somewhere. I had too much junk in mine. Anyway, MATLAB could actually be storing them temporarily as well. I don't know whether that. But anyway, things are being written up into MATLAB as we do this. And what we're going to do here is we're going to before we even do anything, they're just going to have us play around with it. So here they say, here what they're talking about here in the book on page 602 is how each one of the visual objects on your GUI is going to have a callback of some kind. Each one of your graphical objects is going to have some kind of function associated with it. And in this case, we have our function here. If I go back to my window, if I go back to my view, if I can do that, let's see here. Actually, if I just run it again, it'll bring this up. And if I click on, let's see. I guess I have to go back to the editing window. So let's go back to the editing window. If I click on this thing here, if I highlight my axes, it should bring up a particular function in. Need to. Can I dock this thing? Let me dock it. Okay, so it used to be that you could click on this, and you should be able to. So if I click on this one, it should take me. It should highlight the particular function in here. Let's see. Yeah, so if I click on this one and I go to view callbacks, create function, delete function, button down function. Okay, so here it is. If I go, in your what do they call this window? They call this the editor window. Editor window? I don't know what they call it. Anyway, if you go to view callbacks, you can actually click on the callbacks here, and it will actually take you to different things that are associated with this one in the code. So it helps you define where things are, I guess, in your code. This is really helpful when you have huge GUIs with just lots and lots of functionality. So, kind of important. Okay, so now, let's see, let's go to, let's do this and view the callbacks. And let's just go, it doesn't, for me, it doesn't show just the regular callback. That's okay. We go down here to my edit 2. So I go to my edit 2 callback here. And what we want to do is go down to the let's open up this thing so we can see what we're doing here again. Excuse me. So this particular function is going to allow you to bring in some things. So remember, the things that you put in the parentheses over here are parameters that you're allowed to put into the function, things that it's expecting to receive. One of the things that we're going to ask it to pull in is a number from the screen, a number from the GUI screen, and that number is right now inside this text box. Excuse me. When the user types a number in here, this program that MATLAB has written for us is going to put the number that they put in here into a holder. It's going to be saved as a variable, and it's going to be a string variable. So it's not a number really, it's a string. So we're going to have to go grab that string after the person puts this number in here, and then use that number in our function. So here we're going to do that. And we're going to use the function called get, and we're going to store whatever we get into H object. And it's going to be of type string. And this may seem a little confusing because MATLAB has written all this code for us. MATLAB has already told this code that H object is the thing that's there. It's already stored that object in that string into this thing, H object. We're just going and grabbing it, and then we're going to put it into this function. So this function can use that guy, the object that's in our little string entry thing. It can use these other two things that are coming from the other two things in our screen. We have event data and handles. And it gets so confusing because there can be so many things kicking around in there that MATLAB automatically makes for us. But anyway, we have this object now. MATLAB knows what it is. It is a string that the user is going to type some number into that, and it's going to come through as a string. We're going to have to change that thing into a number. So the way that we're going to change that thing into a number is we're going to assign it to a new variable. We're going to call our new variable sides. And we're going to let sides equal this HO object thing after we've converted it, string to double. So we go string to double, and we take this thing here, and we can actually, we don't even actually have to do this first. We can actually put this directly into this. So we can cut this out here and put it right in here, which is what they do. So we're good. And then we're going to go ahead and do some things with that information. We're going to define theta. So we've done this before, from 0 to 2 pi, 0 to 2 times pi, where's my time? Okay. And we're going to divide it by the number of sides that we have. And then we're going to go all the way to 2 pi. So essentially we're dividing up all the angles between 0 and 2 pi by the number of sides that we have, divided by, or the 2 pi divided by the number of sides we have. So that we get the correct amount of angle per theta. We'll go ahead and suppress that, and we'll suppress the previous one as well. And then we'll put in some code here for graphing this. We're going to graph theta and r. Oh, we didn't put in r. Let's put in r. What is r? R is going to equal a whole bunch of ones in an array. 1 length theta. So the reason we're just doing this is just really quickly is because we've already done it before. We don't have to really worry. We can put a title in it if we want. We can title it we could even put in we could even tell it how many sides this is. So we have this string stored in here as the HO object or the H object, and we'd have to let's see, I can't remember how that's done. Is it I can't remember the syntax for that, but anyway, we can add the string. We can add the string in here in the middle and call it a so many sided polygon if we want to. We're just going to call it a polygon for now, because we do have that string stored, which is the number of sides, and that works. And then we go ahead and do the save and run thing. Run it, right? Put our number in here and see if it works. And look at that, it works. Type in another one, it'll do it again. And it will just keep doing this until you stop running it. And notice I didn't suppress my output on my ones array, apparently. So if I want to fix that, I should probably go back and fix that. I'll go ahead and close this. And I spelled polygon instead of polygon. So I'll fix that. Then I'll suppress my R array, my ones array, so it doesn't print out to the screen because that takes forever. Then I'll go ahead and save it and run it again. And then the number that goes here, I'm having to highlight this thing every time, which can be fixed. There is a way to fix that. I don't remember how to do it, but it can be fixed. One way to fix it is to just leave the text out of it entirely, right? So if we go back to our inspector, or go back to our editor window, and double click on this, your number goes here, and go down to our string here, I can actually go up here and just erase that, hit OK, and it's just going to leave it blank, and then I don't have to worry about it. Right, and then I can go ahead and run and save that. And that, of course, has changed. No, it has not changed it because I didn't save it. Dang it. Okay, so let's double click on this. String is there. Now I save it. So I have to save it in this window for it to save the underlying code of my thing. And then I come up here and run my code. And now it's erased it. And then I can just type in a number, whatever I want. But every time I go back, you could actually write into your code that it erases this number every time as well. How would you do that? Well, let's go figure that out. Remember, what was that thing? That thing was the H object, right? And if when I'm done with this plot, I want to reset that, I think I can do it immediately. I think I can say H object equals, and it's a string, remember, so I'm just going to put empty, just an empty string, a string that has nothing in it. Let's see if that does it for me. So if I put in 7, it gives me 7, but it didn't do it. So there's obviously a loop somewhere that I have to work this through. Actually, no, there's not. What I need to do is I can't remember. There's some code, there's somewhere in the code there's something that you have to do, and it has something to do with the initialization of it, and I can't remember what it is. And you want to be careful in the initialization. They say do not edit initialization. And that's certainly true. You don't want to mess with that stuff. Why do they even show it? Because some people do mess with it, and that's fine. It's just you need to know what you're doing so you don't screw up things irrevocably. If it says do not edit, you probably shouldn't edit it. I think it has something to do with this code up here to do that. We could also rewrite some code down here. We just have to figure out what MATLAB requires for you to reset that to an empty string. And maybe they'll teach us that. I can't remember. Oh yeah, they do teach us that. Oh no, not there. I think that they do teach us that later because they teach us, yeah, they do teach us how to do a reset button. So we'll learn that later. Anyway. So the point being here is that you have now created your very first graphical user interface. Congratulations, it's boring. Now let's do something more interesting, right? That's the idea. So let's look at the next one here. The next one we're going to do a very similar program, except instead of just plugging in one number, we're going to plug in two numbers and have an initiation button, a button that like tells it to go and do what we want it to do, kind of thing, right? So we're going to go ahead and start over again. We'll close this out, close out our previous little editing window there, and we're going to open up a new one of these. We'll start with a new, excuse me. Let's see, now I can't open a new one. Why can't I open a new one? There we go. So I'm going to close my GUI and open a new GUI. And we'll again start with a blank GUI, default. And we're going to bring another one of these axes in because we're going to graph something again. Why not? It's easy to do. make it a little bit bigger. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in static text. So here's a static text box. We're going to do a different kind of static text box, and we're going to try to give ourselves some more room. So we're going to go down here, and we're going to open up this screen a little bit more, which is going to give us some more room. Then we're going to open up our static text box and give us some more room in there. How come I can't get on there? It doesn't want me to change the size. So we'll just move it. Okay. Okay, so now, let's see. They want us to put an outline around that box. I can't remember how to do that. It's got to be somewhere in the editor. Or the inspector, rather. So we go to our editor, our property inspector rather, and let's see, exchange font to handle visibility. No, that's not it. Horizontal alignment, position, style, tag.
There's border at the top.
Border. Mine doesn't have border at the top. Yours does, but mine doesn't. So you want to put a border on it. Mine has a different way of doing it, and I can't remember how to do it. So go ahead and put a border around it. Choose your border. Choose your own border, your own adventure.
And mine doesn't have border either.
There's a way to do it. It just depends on the. It depends on the thing here. Just can't remember. Anyway, so go ahead and put a border around it if you want, but then also we go to go back to that inspector there, and we'll go to our text here, our static text, and we're going to, it says horizontal alignment, center, and then there should be a, yeah, let's put left. So we'll put our text off to the left, and then in our text box, we'll put enter our launch conditions. Yeah. And then we're going to put inside of this little space that we've created, we're going to put some other objects. So we're going to go ahead and put in a couple of edit text boxes here. Go ahead and duplicate that one. Put it down here. Now duplicate and copy, I think, do two different things in the graphical user interface. And I can't remember. I think duplicate creates a whole nother set of code, so that each of these text boxes has its own set of code, and it saves to a different place. I think if you copy the text box, it doesn't necessarily do that. I think it saves to the same thing. So you have to be careful when you do that. I believe that it's different. You don't want to just copy. You want to go to duplicate, is my understanding, if I remember correctly. Like I said, this is still new to me. I've only done this once before in a class, so I'll probably get a lot more experience doing MATLAB programming as I go through my own graduate school here in the next couple of years, but it's been a while. All right, so then we want to do some more static text inside of here, so we'll put in two more static text boxes, one here. Go ahead and this one you could duplicate or copy and then just change one or the other. Then I'm going to line them up here with each other. They do have a lineup function where if you put them kind of like that and then drag them down, they'll line up with each other. So that you don't have to worry about lining them up. It just does it on its own. Then I'm going to change the text in this one to launch angle. I'm going to change this one to launch speed. Miles per hour is probably not correct. It's probably meters per second. Of course, neither of these are showing their whole thing. So I'm going to click, if I go to this size change and just click once, it'll change it to the right size so that it shows up. And if I want this to line up with this one again, I can just bring it up here and it'll snap to it. It should snap to it. And then I can bring it down here. So there we go. We've got our launch conditions buttons, or text boxes, I guess. I actually want to move these text boxes over a little bit, make them a little bit more centered, maybe. And notice that they line up with each other automatically, unless you force them to misalign, which is nice. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go ahead and take out the text, just erase it entirely.
Good.
And you know, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to change this one. I don't want to. Well, let's not change it for now. But what I was going to do, which would take us a little bit beyond what we want to do at the moment, is you could actually have a list box so you could choose different angles. Or you could have a pop-up menu where you choose different angles. Or you could have all kinds of things where you could choose angles or whatever. You could have a slider that would allow them to choose angles. So you have a slider in here that goes from 0 to 360 in steps of 1 degree angle or something like this. So you're starting to create things that start to look more and more like the interactive GUI kind of stuff that you see in everyday life when you're using computers. So that takes us that far. Now the final thing that we want to do is we want to include a push button. So we'll look along here and we've got a push button. Right, here's our push button. So we put a push button out here to the right, and we'll make this our fire button. So the interesting thing about the push buttons and just about everything else in here is that you can do so much with it. You could make this look like fire if you wanted to. It takes a little more programming, but it can be done. I'll go ahead and double click on it and change this to fire. All right. And we'll go ahead and mess around with the text to there as well. We might as well make it nice and red. And we might as well make the background color very yellow. And then let's go to 10-point font. Let's go to 50-point font. And let's do boldface. Let's see how big this has to be to make this work. There we go. We like that. All right, so we've got it going. We're ready to go here. Let's go ahead and save that. And when we save that, we're going to save it as, what do they save it as here? Something.
Ready, aim, fire.
Ready, aim, fire, huh? Okay. Ready, aim, fire. We're all about that. Okay, so we save that as our little figure file, and it writes all the code for us, and it gets us going. So now we've got a push button 1 callback here. So that's one thing that that it's created for our push button. Go here, we have an edit 2 again. We have another edit 2. So we have, because we have 2 of those now, since we have, and then we have an edit 1 here. So we have a bunch of things that we can edit, and some other things that we really shouldn't edit. All right, so now what? So we're going to go back down now to our launch angle. We're actually not going to go to the function one this time right away. We're going to go to the launch angle callback one. Let's see if I didn't skip anything. Did I get everything in there they want us to put in there? Yes, we did. Okay, so what's going on here? And this is actually where another place where your ability to draw some kind of a representation of your function using the traditional methods that we've studied so far. What is that worksheet I gave you called? It was called the can't remember what's something. The flow time, the flow chart workshop, right? It was called flow charting workshop or something like that. So the flow charting methods that we showed you, those visualization methods, or whatever method you want to use. Some people just like to kind of just draw some circles with arrows on it on paper, and that works fine too. But in this case, you can start to see where things are going back and forth from object to object. I prefer to look just at this. And you can print this off actually and just use arrows on this paper to show where things are going. So where are things going? Of course, you have user inputs, where the user inputs a number here and a number here, and those user inputs are going to be stored into variables. So you can maybe put an arrow down here and store it into variables here. What are those variables going to be called? Well, MATLAB chooses what they're going to be called at first, or where it's more MATLAB chooses where they are inside of a function, because the function is going to store them somehow. And then how are you going to get them, and then what are you going to do with them? We're going to take these things, we're going to do some calculations with them, with the angle function, with the launch speed function. We're going to do some calculations with those things, and then we're going to, whenever somebody pushes this button, we're going to take those calculations and we're going to plot them to this window, right? We're going to plot the results to this window when they push the button. So you have input from user here going into variables being calculating something with those variables. In fact, you don't even calculate something with those variables till the button is pushed. So these numbers are put in, MATLAB keeps track of them. Push the button and you calculate something with those and plot it to this up here, right? So those are a lot of the things that we need to do. But this button, for example, is going to need to know these two numbers. So wherever the callback is, wherever the function is that is associated with pushing this button, that's where we're going to do some calculations, and that's where we're going to ask for these numbers from MATLAB, and then we'll send whatever we do from there up to this window. Let's see if that's the way they do it. I hope that's the way they do it. Launch angle call. So first find the launch angle callback subfunction. So they're going to start in this launch angle callback subfunction, and we're going to add some code to change the angle from a string to a number again. So we did that before. When we did it before, we kind of just all did it under one thing in the function. Here, they're doing it in a different place. Remember when we did it before, we did it in the opening function here. We're now going to do that under the callback for the launch angle. So let's see if we can find that.
Can you just go back and right click on the box and it'll take it to you and highlight it?
Yes, you can do that. I was hoping I could just find it this way. Or you can go to the go to or to the find, right? So here is the all right, we'll do it your way. So we go to our launch angle. I was hoping I could figure it out just by looking at it. It should be the first one, because that's the first one we put in.
Mine's line 77.
Do the callback. And it is the first one, so that's right. Okay, so this is the first callback edit. They call it edit one underscore callback, and we can actually change that. We can change this to launch angle callback if we want. Let's see. So you can change this in two different ways, and I think that I'm noticing now I skipped something. They actually tell us to go ahead and change that in the inspector. So if I go to the inspector for this, which is this one right here, and you go to the tag, it calls it edit one. We can actually change it here to launch angle. Come on. If we change it to launch angle, the reason that you would do that is just to make your code easier to read. And then you go up in here and you save it. And well, then you run it. You go back actually to here and save it. Go back to here and save it. And then you go back and look for it here. As you go down now, this is why I couldn't find it before, because I forgot to do that one step where you save it. If we go back here
Type in
now,
launch angle and it doesn't take it.
now it's changed the function launch angle to launch angle, and it's changed the callback to launch angle callback.
Mine doesn't update. I change it and it always goes back to edit one.
So if you change, you have once you've changed it, you have to go back to this window here and save it. Did you do that?
No.
This window is where you save your code, and then when you reopen it over here, it saves it as new code. So that's another thing that can be a little confusing. Whenever you're saving something for a GUI, save it in this window. So you can change it here. If you change it here using the inspector or using this stuff, you have to save it here. The only other way to do it is to go over, if you go in here and you rewrite the code here. So if I'd changed edit one to launch angle just by editing it in this window, then I would have to save it here, and then it would change it. Does that make sense?
Right, but I go into the inspector and where it says tag edit one, I change it to launch angle and hit enter, and it changes it right back to edit one. I can't even get out of it to save it.
Okay, so
It's already,
yeah, so go in there and don't hit enter. Just go to your inspector, type it in, and then go to save. And you can just close the inspector. It should work that way.
I'll try. No, still says edit one.
Okay, let me try something really quick. So you went down to the tag,
Tag,
and you double clicked on
Yeah,
edit two.
yep, and I said launch angle.
I'm going to change this to launch underscore speed. And in mine, it lets me hit enter. It didn't let you hit enter.
No, it changes it right back to edit one.
Okay, so and if you close it, it changes it back to edit one as well.
Yep. And mine doesn't pull up a little dialog box like that. It takes the whole screen, and you can't minimize it or drag it or anything. So,
Huh. That's weird. Is that happening for everybody?
I don't know what your guys are doing.
No, mine's not doing that.
So are you opening up properties or the inspector? Like if you turn on,
Inspector.
oops. If I go here, you're opening the property inspector?
Yeah.
Huh.
Then I scroll down to tag. It says edit one. I double click in there and say launch angle.
Is there anything
Hit
else?
enter. And I hit enter and it goes right back to edit one.
Is there anything else in there that has a save or a edit button or anything
No.
like that? No?
The only things at the top are group properties, list properties, collapse properties, or expand properties.
That's it, huh? Okay, so I guess, sorry, did somebody else want to say something? Okay. I can check into that. I actually, and I finished loading, I got around to loading is a better way to say this. MATLAB on my new computer. I haven't done it on this computer yet. We still need to do that. But when
What's the style on yours? Is it edit?
yeah, in style it says edit.
Okay, mine said text, so let me change it to edit and see if it works.
Yeah,
No, still didn't work.
still didn't work, huh? But did you go to style and change to edit and then save it?
Let me try it again.
Oh, you know what? Another thing that might be the case. I know what might be the problem. It might still be running the file in your MATLAB program. So you might have to go to MATLAB to open up your MATLAB window and stop the program from running.
Okay, I hit Control C in the program.
So if you go to, yeah, did you go down to the command window? If you go
Yeah.
go down to the command window. If Polygon is still running and there's not a prompt like the double arrow with a blank, then probably it's still running.
Yeah, I have the double arrows.
Okay, and you've got a blinking cursor like this.
Let me go back to it. Yes.
Okay, so then that's not the problem. What else can I think of that might be the problem?
Yeah, still says it.
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I'll have to go to and explore that. I'm not sure what could be the problem. Can you edit the text in your editor? Can you go in here and edit the M file and actually change the name of the function? If you go to function edit one, can you change it? Can you change every instance of edit one to launch angle? If you do that every time you see edit one, change it to launch angle underscore, then that should fix it. There should be two instances of edit one where they create the object.
Launch underscore angle.
Yeah, just type that in instead of edit one, and then that should change it.
Okay, I hit save on it, so I'll go back in and see if it changes. No, still says edit one.
Okay, so that, yeah, I suspected that might be hidden code. There's a lot of hidden code in here, in this initiation stuff that goes on. A lot of code that we don't see. So I don't know. I'll have to check. I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. Is anybody else having that problem where they can't change the name of the subfunction to launch angle? No? Huh. I don't know. maybe just start over and see if you can make it work. Maybe something goofy went on in one of the steps. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can think of at this moment. Anyway, I'm going to change the other one to launch speed. As you may have noticed, I went ahead and changed that one. So now my edit 2 thing should have been changed to launch speed, and there it is, launch speed. And then the push button still doesn't have, it's still just called push button 1, so I'm going to go ahead and change that one too. Might as well make things easy to understand, especially if you had multiple push buttons. You want to know which one is which in the code. So we'll go ahead and change that one. Change the tag. And we'll call it the fire button. Usually you only do this if you have more than one thing, but we'll just get practice doing it anyway. Oops. I do have to push enter, it turns out. Then I can save it. Alright, so now let's change those ones. Alright. Okay, so now we're actually going to use some of the handles that are created by these. So if you remember from the last time, we created a function. We created image handles where we could change different things about an image or change different things about something that we'd made by just calling the function instead of bringing up the inspector or rewriting a bunch of writing a bunch of code. We could just use this handles notation that is built into MATLAB, which is kind of like shortcutting. So in this case, we're going to go under the launch angle callback, and we're going to.
I got a question for you quick.
Sure.
So I got out of it and come back in just to see if there was something not saved. And how do I open that editor back up for GUI?
So
is that through MATLAB?
Yeah. So to open that up, you go back to. So are you trying to open up the same one you just made?
Right. I just wanted to get out of it, come back in, and see if it had something.
Okay. So if it's you want to open up readyaimfire.fig, and that will take you to that. Yeah. So the .fig files are the editor window, the drag and drop editor window. The .m files are your function files with all the code in them. And then that's all we've dealt with so far with these. Besides,
see, and that opens if I do the .fig one, that opens the actual. It's not the editor; it's just the actual graph itself.
Okay. Just the what?
Well, it's just where I punch in numbers. It's not where I can edit it. The .fig one is.
So it brings up this one. What does it bring up? This window here?
No. It brings up the final project of it.
Oh, I see.
Just enter numbers.
I see what you're saying. So then go to view, and
It doesn't even have all that.
and hit. Let's see. It doesn't have that on it either. Huh?
No,
Okay, so go to. Let's see. How do we want to do this? Go to. Does it show your code in the MATLAB window?
Yes, I have that open. Yeah.
Okay.
Run it?
And yeah, I'll try to run it and see if it brings up the other one. Or
Yeah, it pulls up the same one.
did you open it through the open?
Yes.
So you opened the particular file here, okay.
I just hit open and then changed it to the FIG files and found it and opened it that way.
Let's see if I can figure that out. Let's see. That's a good question. I don't know. Let's ask Google. Can't find the right window. There it is. My GUI editor window will not open. Open GUI. Okay. All right. I think we can figure this out. So let's go to. We want to be able to open. We want to open the guide editor.
Right.
And that should have a button somewhere. Where is it? Let's go up to search documentation. Open guide. Oh, I know how to do. I know how to do it. Never mind. I remember how to do it. Go back to the home and go to new. Go to new, and then go to graphical user interface, and then open a existing GUI, and then open the figure window. And then it will open it with the guide editor. That's how you do it. I had completely forgotten that. So,
All right, I'm back.
all right, sounds good. Sorry, I couldn't remember how to do that because I've done that. I've got myself in that situation a couple times, but again, it was a year ago, and that was my first time it's ever happened, so I forgot. But so whenever you're getting into your GUIs, always go to new, and then you're going to go to apps, and then graphical user interface, and then open up an existing GUI or a new GUI, either way. All right, that took too long.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault for not remembering that. I would write all these things down, but then I'd just lose everything that I wrote down. I have to look it up again anyway. Eventually, in a year or two, I'll just remember all these things or something like that. Okay, so we were at changing the launch angle code now. So we want to do something with the launch angle. So remember when we want something to happen with the data that comes out of, that's being put into or whatever into our GUI, we want to go to our callback functions. In this case, we're going to our launch angle callback, which is
77.
yeah, right here. Launch angle callback, right here, line 77. And we're going to go ahead. I usually put my code in before the hints so that we have some stuff separating. And in this case, we're going to use the handles that are here. So, excuse me. We're going to put into let's see, what are we doing here? So we're going to put into this remember that handles are essentially just an array, just a matrix here. We're going to put into this thing into a particular part of this array, this theta thing, and we're going to take our theta from the GUI, the GUI string to double, Sorry, I'm trying to think and type at the same time. It's not really working out so well. We're going to get the number as a string again. So this is actually a string coming out of our H object again. H object. I told you it gets a little confusing, but hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully it's much less confusing for you than it was for me the first time. And this is a string, so we're going to have to pull it out as a string. And then we're going to change that string into a number using the string to double function. And then we're going to put that into handles.theta. So we're going to store that into this array called handles.theta. I'm going to go ahead and suppress that so it doesn't print to the screen. And then we're going to do so let's see here. What does this part do? Oh yeah, this part, this actually tells, this part here is going to tell MATLAB, it's going to update MATLAB to where this information is. Is that right? Yeah. So this is going to tell MATLAB where this stuff is. So the HO object is now in this handles array. So now everybody else knows where it is, so they can go and get it. And we're going to do the same thing under the launch velocity. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it down here under the launch velocity or launch speed callback. I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to change some things because we don't want this to equal theta. We want this now to equal velocity. We're going to just call it VEL, and that's fine. And the rest of it does the same. All right, so now this is what confused me, is that we use this H object in both things. But in each one of these functions, MATLAB knows that H object is the number that it pulls out of this particular function that is associated with the launch angle callback. This one, HO object, is the thing that is associated with the launch speed callback. So it's not confusing to MATLAB that we're using H object in both places, because that means something different when it's in a different function. It's pulling a different number off the screen because it's associated with a different part of the graphical user interface. So hopefully that's not too confusing to you. It was very confusing to me. But anyway, we're getting here now. So now we go. So now we've pulled the numbers out. We've changed them. We've changed these number strings into numbers, and we've done that at each one of the functions that pulls those numbers out. When we did it with the other one, we could just do it in one spot because we were only pulling out one number. In this case, since we're pulling out separate numbers and H object is used individually with both of those in both of those functions, we have to do it separately at each callback. Now we're going to use those numbers later, and that's why we put them into this handles array. We're going to use those numbers later when we fire the button. So we're going to go into the fire button callback area here, and we're going to add in some code. So the fire button callback is going to have the following code, which is at the bottom of page 606 if you're following along. And we're going to start with time. We're going to define our time array. Oh goodness, I just reverted back to two separate types of coding, trying to put in a variable. Every code has its different way of putting in variables, and sometimes I forget which one's which, but here we go. Okay, so time is going to be, we're going to go from 0, we're going to go to all the way to 100 steps of 0.001. Just like that. From 0 to 0.001. So we're going to have that many time steps. We're going to define a height. So this is the physics of the problem here. Is going to be time. And we would normally multiply this times velocity, right? But since velocity has now been stored in the handles array, then we're going to pull it out of the handles array as handles.velocity. So that's that handles thing that we used. And then we're going to multiply that times the cosine. And we're going to use this particular cosine function where we're going to take a cosine of something in an array. So we use cosine d there. Can't remember what that d is for, but anyway, what it stands for. But anyway, that's what it's used for. And we're going to take the handles now dot, what did we call that one? Theta. Handles dot theta, we can take the cosine of handles dot theta, and that'll be our height. And then we're going to take our distance, which they're calling v. I guess that's, yeah. So v is going to equal time, oops, times handles dot, actually this is our velocity, and then we'll find our position using this later. So anyway, this is our velocity in the x direction. So velocity times sine handles theta. Oops. This is actually the velocity in the this is actually velocity in the y direction, not the x direction. I don't know why. Oh, okay, h, I see what they did here. In h, they're actually, so the angle is opposite what I thought it was. But h is actually, this is actually the velocity in the horizontal direction. This is not height. So this is, and so if you wanted to put in some, this is horizontal, that's why they called it h. This one is going to be your vertical velocity. This is why they're subtracting off 1/2 times 9.8 times time squared, because that's the kinematic equation for that. We have to put a dot squared here. And that should get us what we want there. And then we're going to use these things to calculate our horizontal and vertical positions now. So our horizontal position is going to equal h. Nope, we're not done yet. We also need to separate out everything that's positive. So we're going to look for the positive parts of our velocities. So the positive parts, we're going to find everything in v greater than 0. Greater than or equal to 0, rather. Greater than or equal to 0. Okay. And then we're going to do our horizontal. Okay, so our horizontal is going to equal our h positive and our vertical is going to equal v positive. So we're only looking for the positive stuff here. There we go. That's good. And then we're going to do our plot. So we're going to do a comet plot, which if you remember what a comet plot is, a comet plot is a plot where it plots point by point in time, so it looks like it's moving. And we're going to plot horizontal versus vertical, X and Y. And that should do it. Let's go ahead and save and run our code here. See what happens. So we'll do an angle of 45 degrees with a launch speed of 45 meters per second. See what happens. Woo! That's exactly what we would expect. If we change this to 15 degrees, 45 degrees, oh, so we got a problem. It's not changing my angle. Let's see. So I obviously got a problem with my angle here that's funky. Actually, no, I don't. I think what's happening is so if you look at my coordinate system is changing to adapt for my angle, I believe. Yeah. So I need to So I need to fix the numbers on the axes here so that it always shows the right angles, same angles. And that's actually what we're going to do in the next one, in the next example. Man, I'm getting tired and we still have a few sections to go here. Let's keep going. I'm going to actually take a break just for a minute to get some water so I don't fall over dead. I'll be right back. Okay. So, does anybody have any other questions about that one before we move on to the new and improved one? We're going to do a new and
So
improved
is it
one.
easier to start with a GUI and then start entering your code in certain locations, or write your code and then try to tie a GUI into it?
Well, that's a good question. Either way really works. So, for example, with that Polygon program, we've already written that code, and it would have just been as easy to cut and paste that code into the GUI after we'd written the code, as you can see. The only real thing that you have to worry about, no matter which one you're doing, is what needs to go where in the GUI code, because you have to decide. For example, with the Polygon, we only had one number being entered in, so it didn't really matter where we put the code. We could have put it anywhere, and it would have worked, really. Under any of the callbacks, really. Or in fact, we didn't do it. We could have put it under the callback, or we could have put it under the create function. We ended up putting it under the main create function function, and it works because it was a very simple one. But with this one, the more complex you get, you have to really think about what needs to happen first, right? And so, and you also have to keep track of things. So when you have multiple inputs coming in, MATLAB treats those inputs within the function that they come in. So when a number comes in under a enter string box, like the launch speed, for example, then you have to deal with that number there. You have to change it into whatever you need to change it into there, and then you need to send it out to the program using a handles array, so that the rest of the program can use it. Because otherwise, only this function really can use it, and it's a string. You need to change it from a string to a number, and then put it out there so that everybody can use it. I'm using the handles and the GUI data function. And the more complex it gets, the more there is to do. So what I recommend is that you test the functionality of your code for doing individual tasks, like graphing something or calculating something. You test those individually and write them individually, and then you put them in where they need to go into the function. Because if you don't know that your code's going to work and you put it into your GUI, it could be that you've put it in the wrong place, so that it's not calling it correctly, or it just doesn't work, right? So it can get really confusing. Writing these things can get extremely confusing because there's just so much code involved. But that's kind of an artifact. That's kind of the direct result of doing more and more complex programming, is that you have more and more complex code, right, that you have to keep track of. The advantage here is that they've done a lot of the complex code they've done for us, and they're not even showing it to us. It's all hidden in a bunch of these functions up here. So it's not something that we're having to deal with. We just have to deal with the functions that bring data into the GUI, that calculate things within the GUI, and then send things out of the GUI. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not really an answer. It's more of this is going to be complicated. But you try to make it as the least complicated program as possible by organizing things beforehand and then putting them in the best place for them to be put in. And programming is just one of those things that the more time that you have doing it, the more you do it, the better you get at it, because you start to kind of develop your own style of doing things, and then it just makes sense to you the way you do it. It's like walking into somebody's workshop and you're like, where's the hammer? And you're like, I don't know where the hammer is. It doesn't make any sense. Where's your hammer? And then they open up some drawer and it just makes sense to them that hammers are there, because that's where they've always put them. To them, they like to find their hammer there, or whatever. It's a weird thing. Everybody programs differently. In many ways. You'll find that especially programmers who have gone to school will have a tendency to program in very similar ways, because many people who teach programming teach in very similar ways, because we'd like to see programming done in the best, most organized, most efficient way possible. So we try to teach those kinds of methods. Programmers who have their own education, who taught themselves, learned by doing, they can be all over the place. Sometimes their methods are even better and more efficient and more organized than what's taught in schools, and sometimes it's far worse. And sometimes they come to the same conclusions that most programmers do, that there are these methods that work best. But you can get both really bad programming and really, really innovative and amazing programming from people who haven't been exposed to programming in a course, because they've been forced to organize it and to program it in the way that they thought best. And that's actually led to some really amazing leaps forward in programming. And that's really what I think that's ideal if you're trying to make changes to the way programs are done, is to bring in a bunch of people who are self-taught, have them look at the code and say, well, we should change it this way, we should change it that way, and have them fight over it until it works the best way possible. And most people think that too. That's how most programming is done in the real world. You have a lot of programmers working on the same thing, and whoever comes up with the best thing that works most efficiently and the quickest, that's what you go with. So, okay, so in this new and improved program, I'm not going to necessarily add all the code in everywhere, but I'm going to show you the highlights of the things that they do. So the first one I am going to do, and that is we're going to go to the opening code. So we go to, at the very beginning, we go down here, right here. So ready, aim, fire, opening function. That's your opening code, right? And under this code, so this right here, end of initialization, do not edit. This is the first place where you can start entering in code, is right after the do not edit. So above do not edit, do not do anything with. Below do not edit is where you can start. And down in here, you can see that we've created some, they've created some handles for us so that we have the handles array set up for us. And under here, right under here, I'm actually going to add in some other things as well. So I'm going to add in plot, and I'm going to plot 275, comma 0, and I'm going to put an S there, and I'm going to do marker size 10. I'm going to do marker face color. I keep messing up things because I can't see my screen. Marker face color. There we go. We're going to call that red. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and put in some text here on our plot. Text we're going to put at 275 and 50. And we're going to tell it to say target. Target. And then we're going to do an axis. So this is going to make our axis fixed. Our axes are going to go from 0 to 1000 on the x-axis and from 0 to 500. So it won't be automatically changing all the time to fit our graph. So it'll actually, that's the thing that's going to actually make it look like a fixed space. And then we're going to run it, see what happens. Oh, I didn't like that. What did I do?
Mine is like the parentheses on line 62 is what mine is like.
Oh, yeah. That has to be, you have to put these inside of square brackets because it's an array. I forgot about that, sorry. There we go. Okay, so what we've done now is we've created this little red marker there. It's a square red marker, so we've added a marker that's a square. It's a size 10. It's red, and we've put text there as well, calling it the target, right? We've created this is kind of like our firing range up here from 0 to 500 high, from 0 to 1000 long. And now we can start launching, and we're going to see something different. Angle in degrees, launch speed 5, and we go ahead and launch it, right? Fire. That didn't work. There we go. So if I launch it at 50 degrees and 56 meters per second, it almost hit the target. So I can change something. Let's change the angle to 48 and fire. Right? Oh man. Change the launch speed to 50 and fire. And so on and so forth. Right? So it's kind of a fun little fix.
Go 60 and 56.
What's that? You want to hit it.
60 and 56.
You really want to hit it, don't you?
I did.
All right, see if we can hit it. That's not good enough. Took too long to get there, so I'm going to do 30 and 56. Anyway, so that's one thing that you can do. That's some of the other things that you can do. You can manipulate the graph, but this is all stuff we've done before. Setting the axes, you can do that inside of a program. Putting markers and text on a graph, you can do that here. So there's nothing new there, really. Let's see, what else do we do? What else do we do? Oh, so, and then you can also reset. So we can put in a reset button, which they also do. Actually, let me see here. What the first thing they want to do is, so what they want to do now is clear the screen. So what if we don't want to keep all these shots on here and we want to clear the screen? Every time we fire again, it clears the screen and then goes to a new spot. There is a way to do that, and that is under the code. So if we close this off and we go down to let's see, it's the reset push button callback subfunction. So let's go find it. Let's see, ready, aim, fire, does fire button callback.
Yeah, you have to put a button in though, right?
I don't know if you have to put it in or.
Well, it says return to the guide layout editor and add an additional push button.
Right.
And you rename it to reset.
Oh, that's right. That's what they want us to do. Okay. Sorry, I was reading. I skipped a line or two and didn't read that part. So what they want us to do is to put in the reset button. I thought that was in the next section, but that's not. That's in this one. Okay, so what they do is they set in a new reset button, and then they turn off the hold, and that's on page 608. So they turn off the hold, and then they reset the plot. So they rewrite this code over again after they've put a hold off, and then they put a hold on. So it's essentially everything here with a hold off in front of it, and then you put that after the reset button, so that when you push the reset button, it wouldn't go in here. This is at the opening function. When you put in your reset button, you're going to get another reset button callback that you would call reset button callback. And then you would put that code in here, and every time you hit the reset, it would rewrite your screen. It would rewrite your the picture on your screen to a blank screen with the target. Let's see, what else do they do? Oh, here's the picture for that with the reset button. Also, you can set your target location. So you can actually call out for a target location instead of having numbers typed in right here into your target location at your opening function. So for these numbers right in here, which are at your plot right here, 275.0. That's the market for your target location, and the 275.50 for your target text. Instead of just typing those in here into the code, you can actually call those in, asking the user to set up where the target's going to be. So you can put the target wherever you want. You could put it up in the middle of the air somewhere, way at the end of the firing range or at the beginning of the firing range. Or you could use a slider to move it, which is what they actually do. So they use a slider to slide it back and forth on the y-axis. So let's go ahead and try to use a slider. That'll be kind of fun. So we're going to go over to our editor window here and use a slider button. And they start moving things around first. Let's move things around first. So let's click on, whoops, delete that. Click on this guy. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a little bit of arranging things. So I'm going to click on multiple things. I'm going to click on this guy, and I'm going to hold down my shift button, and I'm going to click on this one. I'm holding down my shift, and it selects all of these things. And then I'm going to do the right button click, and I'm going to let's see, it used to allow me to do this. Let's try it again. If I click on all these, it used to let me be able to group them together, and I can't see where that option is anymore.
Your tools, align objects, or?
No, align objects will line them up. Like if we do that, it'll give us options for putting them in different alignments. Huh. Well, they used to let me do it. I can still move them all as one if I. So what I was trying to do is.
Button group button. You push the button group.
No, that's a different type of object. So this one, if I select them all at once, it'll allow me to move them all at once. So that's good enough for now. So I'll move them all at once up to here, and then if I click away from them and move this axis, this picture over here, then I can have a different arrangement. Otherwise, I would have had to move them all individually. If you it used to be you could make them into a group so that it would just move them all at once all the time. You click on one and they've all moved, but I guess that's not allowed anymore. But the reason I want to do that is because I want to put my slider button down here underneath my axes. So I'll put my slider here, and notice that it's the standard arrangement for it is to be vertically arranged. But if I make it longer here, it should give me the option to rotate it at some point. Well, let's see here.
I just drug mine out and it stretched it the other way.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the way I do it. Like this. Didn't do that for me.
Use the middle one.
There we go. Thank you. Very nice. So what we want to do is we want to line this up under here and have it be essentially the same length as our axis, which is a little bit futile because once we run this, the axis will be a slightly different size, but we can set this to be the same length as the axis using the inspector. They're doing all the same stuff except for okay, so everything is the same here in this thing except instead of plotting at 275.0, we're going to take something that is going to come from our code for our slider. So if we go down here to our callbacks, oh, we still have to go and save this. So let's go back to here and let's open this thing up, open up this inspector, and we'll call this one we'll call it target slider. No, I'll just call it target. Target position. And then if we put a tag on it as, instead of slider 2, we'll call it target underscore slider, like that. Then we go ahead and we hit enter, close out of here and save this. That will change our code here to give us our target slider. And it's going to grab information based on the position of the slider. So if we can create a slider that's the same length as our window, then wherever the slider is, that's where it's going to end up in the window. So it's already setting these the H object that it's got to this thing, and then we want to put, and it's already putting it in the handles, or let's see here, hold on. Yeah. So we're good there. Now we go up to our initial function here. Right up here. And instead of plotting at 275, we're going to plot something that's been being stored in the handles array by the slider. And it is called location, apparently. Handles.location. Check to make sure that's correct. Yeah, so it's do we have to, I think we actually have to set that into location. Yeah. So we can either do it down here or in the beginning. I'm going to just go ahead and do it down here. So right here, I'm going to put handles. In theirs, they just put it at the beginning, but I'm going to put it with my slider function. Handles.location. So this is going to put the H object into the handles.location spot in our array, and this is a value, as they call it. Okay. So we're going to put that in there. And now MATLAB is going to know that it's there. And up here, we'll be able to use it. Handles.location will be used to plot the target. We'll use handles.location right here as well to put our text in wherever the target's going to be. And our axes will still be the same. We can put it a title if we wanted to, an X label and Y label, and things like that. That's fine. They actually put this in at handles location -25 to, I'll put it at -24, why not? And then they have a hold off at the beginning as well. Remember they did that. Oh no, they did the hold off because they had, they put in the reset button. I haven't put in the reset button, just because I'm running out of time. I have 10 minutes left and I'm not near done. Okay, so anyway, well, I guess if I skip that on, let's go ahead and run this and see how it does. I think we'll be okay with this. Does not like that. What did I do wrong here? Let's see. They put this at the end. I don't know if that matters. I don't think it does. But we'll try it anyway. No, that's not it.
You have to save first.
It should save automatically when I run it, though. Did I save over here, or did I forget? Well, I saved this, so that should be fine. It should save it when I run it automatically.
If you put it in the right spot, shouldn't it be under the slider or no?
Well, I put it under the slider, and maybe it doesn't like it under the slider for now. I'll go ahead and cut this out and put it at the top where they put it. They actually put it way up here at the beginning function. Let's see if I have to do it there. It's possible. It's not reading it in time. Oh yeah, because I use it right here, so I have to put it right here. Now let's try it. Ah, still doesn't like it. Location, good object, value. This shouldn't matter, but we'll need that. Oh, I did something goofy. I don't know what.
You should have hold off underneath handles.
Yeah, but that's only because they put in the reset button. I haven't put in the reset button, so I shouldn't have to have that in there. It doesn't make any difference. Handles dot location, got that. So I've assigned the value. I use the value here. I use it again here. That should be all fine. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. The figure is not happy though. Something's unhappy.
What's on line 42 that says? Hmm.
61 doesn't like 61, but I don't see anything wrong with 61. Let's. Actually, I think all this, now that I think about it, I want to put all this under here. There we go. Now the only thing that I don't have is a target that's going to redraw itself because I didn't do the hold off. But I got close. That's not too bad. So let's go down here to here, hold off. So this stuff all has to be under the target slider callback because every time you move the slider it has to replot this thing. So that's what I did wrong. So every time I move the slider, it has to replot this thing, and I need to plot it at the beginning as well. So that's, and there's some mistake in there somewhere that's not allowing this target to move. But anyway, we're pretty much out of time. There's another class that wants to use this system, so we'll have to sign off now.
So can I do my project on that rapid calculator I was talking about, or no?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so go ahead and I didn't do a homework for this one yet, I don't think, but I will make one.
I think there was a GUI one on there.
Oh, is there? Oh, good. Then you can go ahead and do one.
I think you said 10 and 11, I think, or 9 and 11, or 14 and 15.
Yeah. All right. Well, off you go then. Have a good time. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Yes,